Hello, and welcome to ARTFul Insights. My name is Susan Schifrin. I'm the director of Arts Philadelphia, and together, you and I are going to spend about 30 to 40 minutes looking at a few pieces of art together. This video is produced in partnership between Dementia Society of America and Arts Philadelphia. Each month, we offer a program online, a live program with a small group of people joining together to talk about works of art from museums and cultural centers across the country, a different museum or center each month. And then in addition to that live program, we then produce a video like this. We will be looking at the same works of art that we did in the live group, but with the video, first of all, it's 30 to 40 minutes in length. You can watch it any time of day or night that suits you. And it's an opportunity to have a more intimate, a more self-driven conversation about these works of art. I will ask a few questions to get us started, give you a few things to think about. I will share with you some of the observations and thoughts that folks from the live program might have brought up that I think might be interesting for you to consider. But really, this video each month is about you. It's about what you see in these works of art, how you respond to them, and just having the opportunity to look at them and think about them at your own pace. If you're watching this video with someone, then by all means, feel free to pause the video from time to time if you'd like, so that you can have your own conversation. If you're watching on your own, then I'm delighted, and it'll be a conversation between the two of us. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to the museum or cultural center that we will be visiting this month. Welcome to ARTFul Insights. So it's my great pleasure to welcome you to our ARTFul Insights program, where we'll be visiting the Rhode Island School of Design's Museum of Art. And we want to thank them for hosting us. I just want to introduce you a little bit to the museum. So what you're seeing here is obviously the outside of the museum. When we go inside, you see the front desk. And as everyone noticed when we had our live group conversation, we now see somebody pointing us towards the next place we're going to go, which is into the galleries. So just a little bit about RISD Museum of Art. It was established in 1877, so it has been around for quite a long time. It focuses on stewarding works of art that represent diverse cultures from ancient times to the present. And because the Rhode Island School of Design is an art school and a design school, the museum focuses on exploring the works of makers and engages deeply with art and artists. So what we're going to be looking at today is just one example of the very varied collection at the RISD Museum of Art. And I'll just show you on their website. You can see these are collections, permanent collection pieces that are on display. If we were to be at the museum, we'd be able to see many of these collections in the galleries. So, without further ado, thanking once again the RISD Museum of Art for hosting us, let's take a look at our first work of art. So here we are taking our first look at the painting that we're going to spend the next 30 minutes talking about. I want, first of all, to give you time to look around this painting. What do you see? What stands out to you? What questions do you have about the painting? When we look at a painting like this, in which the human figure is front and center, we call this a figurative painting. It could be a portrait of a particular person with a particular story. It could be the artist's imagining of a category or type of person. It could be the artist telling us a story, giving us a few clues here and there to what this person's story might be. But before we get ahead of ourselves, I want to invite you, as I said, to take a few minutes just to look. What do you see? What colors do you see? How would you describe the figure in front of us? What do you think of her clothing? Where do you think she is sitting? So take some time to look at this painting, and then when we come back, I will be very interested to see what you found as you were looking more closely at it. And we'll talk a little bit too about what our other participants in our online program thought about the painting. Be right back. Well, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the opportunity to spend some time just quietly absorbing details in the painting. Think of it as a journey around the painting. When we use our eyes and give ourselves real time to just be quiet and look, or maybe not be quiet, but have a conversation with somebody else. But our purpose is to take that time to look and make our way around the painting. All sorts of things come out when we allow ourselves the luxury and the time to do that. So, speaking of time, I wonder what you discovered in your journey around this painting. My first question to you, I asked a lot of questions, but my first question was, what do you see? What most stands out to you as you take a first look at the painting? And I wonder what that was in your case. We are presented here with a few different things to look at. We already talked about the fact that there is a very pronounced focus in this painting on the human figure, a particular human figure? What did you notice about her? What did you see in her expression, in her clothes? I wonder if you had an almost gut response to the painting as you first looked at it. As I mentioned, I want to share with you some of the reactions of the folks who met with us online a couple months back to talk about this painting. Some of their responses, the first glimpse they got of this painting were, "Oh my, wow, wow." Interesting responses. I wonder if you shared any of those. When asked what those wows and oh my's were about, we started to get into a conversation about the presentation of this figure's clothing, her posture. One person commented, "She looks a little bit askew in the front." Now, you know, I think what I'm referring to here. When we say she looks a little bit askew in the front, you can see the area that we're talking about. Let me get a little closer. So you can see that she's slouched, right? One shoulder is higher than the other shoulder. And parallel to that, as a number of our participants noted, her breasts seem to be askew, not held up and closed off as we might expect, but fairly openly revealed, right? So the word that kept coming up was askew. Someone else said, "Definitely askew. She looks a bit like a woman in distress." Let's imagine that a moment ago when we got in close, if we were standing in the gallery looking at the painting hanging on a wall, looking in that detail meant we were very close to the painting. Now, as we're looking at the full painting, it's as though we've backed up to maybe the other side of the gallery and are looking at it as a whole. So this idea of a woman in distress, what do you think about that? Does that ring true to you? Askew, in distress? Someone else very pragmatically said, "Well, it looks like her bra has slipped." Yes, indeed, it does. What did you notice? Did you notice these characteristics of her posture and her clothing as others did? Or were you more drawn in by her face, for instance? What would you say about the look on her face? And can you imagine where she's looking, what she's looking at? I mean, if you look at her eyes, looks like she's looking down, doesn't it? But down this way? Or down another way? If she's looking this way, maybe her look is meant to direct us to follow her eyes What do you think that is that she's holding? It does look like she's holding, doesn't it? One of our participants said, could that be a folded up fan that she's holding? Another said, it looks to her like she's holding a bag. So I guess Robin, who said that she thought it looked like a bag, was looking at this piece here as the top of the bag, maybe bag handles, and looking at this as the body of the bag, the cloth fabric part of the bag. And Robin went further to say, God only knows what's in the bag. At which point someone else said, maybe she's drunk. This all happened just in the first few minutes of our conversation. So clearly, this painting takes us from looking closely at the sitter to exploring all the possible stories that this sitter has brought with her, right? Okay, so we've talked about, could this be a folded up fan she's holding? Could it be bag handles, a cloth bag? And might that be the bag itself? Another one of our participants said that really didn't look to her. This did not look to her like a bag. It looked to her like part of a longer garment, the garment that she's wearing that we see starting at her shoulders and coming down here. So there was a little bit of disagreement about exactly what we were looking at. So we talked about, what might her eyes be directed towards. One possibility is she's looking down at the implement or bag handles or fan we were just looking at, and we're following her eyes by doing that. What are some other possibilities? How would you describe her expression overall? Does she look energetic? Does she look tired? Does she look happy or sad? How would you describe that expression? And as you look at it, how does her expression make you feel? So, what have you come up with? What do you think about her expression? What is she telling us? What is the artist telling us about her? At this point, I want to just ask you, what do you think of this painting? Are you taken with it? Are you, do you feel yourself wanting to look more, wanting to see more? Or are you kind of not sure about this painting? Jackie, one of our online participants, had this to say about it. Jackie got pretty passionate about this painting. Jackie said, I think it's beautiful. I think it's a great painting. The subject is a stunning looking young woman with beautiful dark hair and lovely pale skin with wonderful red lips, and this blue that just accentuates her whole being. And then surrounded by a dark background. I just think this is amazing. I don't know what the subject is, but she's gorgeous. What do you think of that? Do you think she's gorgeous? Did you notice the dark background that Jackie was talking about? Did you notice the dark tresses of her hair and her red lips and her pale skin, yes, but also somewhat flushed cheeks? Jackie commented about the clothing, the color of the clothing, that it accentuates her whole being. I wonder what you make of that idea. Accentuates her whole being. What do you think that would be? It was only late in our conversation with our group online that someone noticed, look at these buttons. That's interesting. It's almost as though perhaps she's got some sort of overcoat, someone suggested. You can see that the buttons seem to go all the way down, as though this is a long piece of clothing that buttons in the front, perhaps. Anyway, we're collecting details here. But as time goes on, those details help us, as I keep saying, to envision more than just a bunch of details. So let's talk about the story that these details help us to envision. Let's think about the story. One of our online participants said of this painting, it's very dramatic. It's almost spiritual. Another person said, she's looking at something. What is she looking at? We talked about that a little bit ourselves, didn't we? And then another person said, something just happened and she's astonished. Does that seem right to you? Does that look like an expression of astonishment, like she can't believe that this thing just happened? Maybe, right? Another one of our participants actually said she's looking for a way to escape. It doesn't look like she belongs there. To which another person said, could she have been attacked? Is that why we see her in this stage of undress? At that point, Mary, one of our group, shared with us a narrative for this painting that she had been really thinking about while we were talking about all the details that we were seeing. She was working on this story, and here's what she had to say. I think she has a sense that she's just recognized something, and it's exactly what she had thought. She had been wrestling with that idea and hurried from like the train station and then come in, and lo and behold, she found that what she was thinking really was true. And it's that aha moment. Yes, I knew it all along, but I don't like it. So astonishment, possibly an unpleasant experience like being attacked, or perhaps this experience of imagining that something was happening, something unpleasant was happening, rushing back to where she is, only to find that it was true. It's a lot of things to think about, isn't it? Just generated by this one figure in this one painting. Mary further commented on the layers of clothing that we see. We've already talked about her bodice, her bra or corsets having slipped, and her being in a state of semi-undress. Mary also pointed out that in the late 1800s, and she believed that this was from the period of the 1800s, women in particular wore lots of layers. They wore corsets, otherwise known as stays. And as she said, stays that would hold people in. That's not what we're seeing here, is it? But then layers of petticoats and layers of clothing on top of that. So Mary takes this layering of clothing to tell us that this is a depiction of a woman in the 1800s. And she said, I like the use of white. It really brings you close in. The white of the chair, the white in her cuffs. Mary took it one step further. You may recall that at one point we were looking at this implement of some sort in her hand, right here. And we were wondering what it was. Was it a folded up fan? Was it some sort of artistic implement? Was it the handles at the top of some sort of fabric shopping bag? Here's what Mary had to say about it. And going back to what's in her hand, says Mary, I hate to go to a murder mystery type of thing, but it's almost as though she picked up the instrument that caused the demise of the person she sees. So Mary's thinking, is that a knife? Was that knife used to hurt somebody? This is getting very dark indeed, isn't it? Very dark indeed. And the conversation that took place after Mary made that suggestion was a bit sobering. Our facilitator, Justine, said, so you're thinking she saw something really upsetting. Someone else had used the word astonished to describe her face. But now we're talking about the possibility that she's looking at something upsetting. Another person in our group suggested that she sees in this person's face not so much fear or upset at something that she's seeing, but resignation. What do you think of that idea? Do you see her gaze, her downward gaze of her eyes, as resignation? As astonishment? As fear? Is she upset? Does looking at her give you any of those feelings? So in response to all of this dark, kind of sobering storytelling around this figure, one of our group had already said that it's a very dramatic, almost spiritual image. Another member of our group now said it's very emotional. And perhaps you're finding that as well. What we haven't really talked about, and that's what we'll do now as we get close to wrapping things up, is where do you think she's sitting? Where is she? One of our participants said, maybe she's in a museum. That would be interesting, wouldn't it? If we're looking at a painting and she's looking at a painting, or looking at us, looking at her. Where else might she be? Does this chair suggest to you that she's sitting comfortably at home? What do you think? One member of our group, in answer to this question, and thinking about the fact that the figure seems to be in semi-undress, and maybe that her overclothes are getting buttoned up, maybe, you know. He said, she seems to be tired. Maybe she's resting after posing. And a few other people jumped in and said, yeah, she's saying, how much longer do I have to sit like this? Mary was happy to take this new tack. If we imagine that she's slumped in the chair because she's been posing for an artist and she's tired, she says, what if she was just starting to put on her overcoat? I think she's referring to this garment as an overcoat. What if she's just starting to put on her overcoat after having modeled whatever dress she had underneath? And perhaps we're seeing part of that here. And maybe she's just sitting back looking at the portrait that was just painted of her and wondering, is that really me? And she looks at the artist. This is Mary continuing, and she looks at the artist putting some finishing touches on her portrait. And she grabs his paintbrush. Maybe that's what that is here. I don't know. And says, enough, let it be. At this point, everyone laughed. And then another member of our group sort of entered into the spirit of Mary's imagining and said, wouldn't it be interesting to see the portrait painted before she put on the overcoat? So we've been all over, everywhere with this painting. We've looked at the details of the sitter's clothing, of her face, of her body, her gesture, her way of sitting, what it implies, maybe what happened before she sat down, maybe what happened or could happen after. We've been all over the place with this painting, haven't we? And Dawn, one of our participants in the online group, concluded by saying, makes you think about a lot of things. And another person said, it really is fun to wonder. And that's what I want to leave you with today. There are no yes or no answers here. There may be a few yes or no answers, and I will give you those. Who is the artist? What is the title? When was it painted? Those are the few yes or no answers we have. But as we look at a painting like this, it's all about wondering. It's all about following where our imaginations take us in relation to what we see, and what other people's comments and thoughts help us to see anew, right? So I hope you've enjoyed our time today. Let me tell you about the yes or no answers, the actual information we have about the painting. Again, I just want to reiterate, this is a painting from the permanent collection of the Rhode Island School of Design Museum, Art Museum, excuse me. The artist is the Italian painter Gaetano Esposito, born 1858, died 1911. This is a painting done around 1880. So the comments about the clothes suggesting the late 1800s, right on. Again, painted in around 1880 in oil on canvas. The size is about 24 by 20 inches. So not by any means a huge painting. This is about 2 feet by a little less than 2 feet, right? The title is The Sigh. What do you think of that? Does knowing that that was the artist's title for this painting, The Sigh, cause you to rethink any of the thoughts you had? Or does it kind of affirm some of the things that you were thinking? What I want to leave you with is that line from one of our program participants, that it really is fun to wonder. And so with that, I want to thank you so much for joining us at ARTFul Insights. I want to thank once again our wonderful hosts at the Rhode Island School of Design Art Museum. This is the second time in 2 years that we've been privileged to partner with RISD, and we're so appreciative that they have welcomed us into their wonderful collections for a second year in a row. I hope that you will take with you the experiences of looking at this painting and the experiences of wondering and questioning and just allowing your observations, your senses, and your imagination to take you wherever they go.